And Barnaby Phillips joins me now live from London. Barnaby, a major political blow for the Prime Minister.
Yes, that's right, Stephen. A humiliation, and he is a diminished figure this morning, both domestically here in Britain and indeed across the world. There will be many people in this country, a majority of MPs obviously, who are happy that Britain will not be using military force against Syria. But there will be people in the government who will fear what this will do to Britain's role in the long term as an international player, and perhaps specifically what it will do to Britain's relationship with the United States. So let me bring in my guest at this point. His name is Dr. James Boyes, and he is an expert on Anglo-American relations. Britain and America, a tight partnership, a special relationship, now in jeopardy, Dr. Boyes?
Well, it's important to remember that the special relationship has been written off more times than I care to remember, and has perhaps had more comebacks than Sinatra ever did. So whilst this is far from being a high point in that relationship, I think that anybody suggesting that it's the end of that relationship is really mistaken.
Let's talk about Syria specifically. Could the Americans go it alone? I mean, obviously militarily they can. Politically, can they?
You're absolutely right. What the Americans were looking for here was political coverage. They didn't require Britain to participate militarily from that sort of side of things. What they wanted was political coverage. Barack Obama, I think, has been driving this process forward for many reasons, perhaps to assuage some sort of guilt over not acting over the last 12 months. And I think David Cameron has been bounced into this vote unnecessarily, perhaps. The Americans can and potentially will go it alone, but quite where this leaves David Cameron at this point is anyone's guess.
But on the question of Syria, I've often had the impression that David Cameron has been more hawkish than Barack Obama, more inclined to use force, almost was pushing him along, and now he's no longer there. He can't join in.
You're absolutely right. Because of the vote in the House last night and Ed Miliband's pointed final question, driving for an answer from the Prime Minister about whether he would use royal prerogative to go it alone effectively with the Americans, that has now been taken off the table and reinforced by Philip Hammond. So the fact that the United States, I think, has the military capacity to do this is one thing, but whether it has the political will to do it, I think is highly unlikely, because Barack Obama is already equivocating upon this.
There are commentators in the British newspapers this morning who are saying that for this country, this is a real historical moment, that we are diminished economically, militarily. We are pulling back, if you like, from the place we once had in the world. Do you see it in those terms?
I think we've got to be careful not to overstate these facts. I'm sure that if the government were here, they would saying, well, hang about, the economy is in a better shape than it has been, that we can project militarily around the world, and that what you've seen is a last-minute hijacking of British foreign policy by a Labour opposition who, until 36 hours ago, gave all indication that they were going to go along with this, and that if they hadn't, David Cameron perhaps wouldn't have brought this vote forward. So I think that we can overstate these facts, but there's no doubt about it that it's a milestone in David Cameron's premiership.
Dr. James Boyes of King's College London University, thank you very much, Stephen. So the debate rages on here after last night's vote in Parliament, but for now, back to you in Doha.